You are listening to part 2 of the Nottingham Forest special on the Final Whistle podcast. Yeah, and it's been said recently, looking at this ownership now, we had Fawaz before, terrible. And when Marinakis came in, it was seemed to be the new dawn that we'd finally got an owner who knows what he's doing, because he did it all with Olympiacos, and it's just not really worked out at all. Everything he's proposed when he took over hasn't happened. I think one of the things that has annoyed people most is the stadium, whether that's on the owner's part or the council and planning permission. I think that's something that's really upset everyone, and that we really wished would have been done by now, and that we would have had this facility, and that probably could boost our performance no matter what. But looking at this ownership, I've had a few discussions with fans on social media about it. And it all seems to be looking at the very top, not necessarily Marinakis himself, but who he's put in charge. Johnny Owen has he really got any place to be on this board, apart from the fact that he did the film? He doesn't seem to be doing stuff from stories that have come out. Des, what are your thoughts on the Marinakis era, and whether he is just a Fawaz with another club?
Yeah, the longer this goes on, the more it's starting to look exactly what we got really disgruntled with Fawaz about, isn't it? In life, not just in football, there's people who talk and there's people who do things, and all the talk was fantastic. We all got excited. We should know by now. We've heard it so many times, I don't really want to comment on the likes of Johnny Owen and Nick Randall. They seem plausible characters. They seem sort of decent and willing, whether I don't know what their day job is, sort of ongoing. Dave Murphy comes in with a good reputation, and you want to believe that he can make a difference. But are they going to be allowed? Because they seem to be the ones who are fronting up this image of, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. COVID was the perfect opportunity to get that main stand sorted out, and I know it's got to go through a lot of red tape, through the councils, through planning permission. But rather than talk about it, just do it. The fans would have been on side, whatever. If that was flattened now and parts of the stadium was inaccessible, the fans would have been on side. They would have been thinking, we're moving forward. Even with the wrong manager and the wrong team, there's some sort of prospect of moving forward. You see at the moment, people are moaning about the stadium itself and Johnny Owen and all these things. They're not important in the grand scheme of things. If we're winning football matches, they're not an issue. It doesn't matter who the commercial director is or what the stadium looks like. It's when everything, like you guys have said already, it's toxic. We're finding reasons to moan, and find, well, we're not. They're giving us reasons to moan, and continue moaning and sort of criticise because they've said we're going to do this, this, and this, and they've not done it. It's as simple as that. Like I say, there's talkers and doers, and Fawaz was the biggest talker of them all. Rather bizarrely, we don't get that same thing from Marinakis, but he puts people out there to say the right things, and we've heard a lot from Dave Murphy. The club sort of structure when these people interview, when these people talk, and then we don't hear anything. I heard another podcast with Gary Birtles and Darren Fletcher talking about the fact that where is Dave Murphy right now? Is Chris Hughton his man? Because if not, there's no reason they haven't sacked him, because this has gone on for too long now. Is he really his man? Come out and back him, and then the fans might go, this is the way it's going to be. And we don't hear any of that sort of rallying cry, that positive news when the chips are down. It's all when they come in and they're going to make massive change and the fans are on board, and Lamouchi's overperformed in his role, and they're sitting on the back of that and almost taking the glory from it. What we need is real sort of big answers from the big people. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's not Marinakis' role, that's Dave Murphy's role. I don't care who it is. We need it from the top. We need it from the top now, not the people who we believe who are sort of instructed to say these things, and that's what it feels like a little bit. Like I say, I've got no sort of beef with Owen or Randall or anybody that works at the club. That like you see them about, they're very sort of nice guys who seem to be sort of, the head seems to be in the club, the heart seems to be in the club, but are they allowed to sort of perform their roles the way they should? And the reality is, until we hear what their remit is and what they should be doing, and where the club's going again, because all of a sudden, the only place the club's going is to League One without any prospect, and that's not the legacy, surely, that Marinakis came in to leave. Because if we did get there, I couldn't see him sticking around too long either. I'd imagine the club would be up for sale and it'd be wiped off as a bad job again.
Definitely. And I think one of the scary things with seeing about who's being in what job is that we had Vrentsos as the supposed CEO over the last couple of years, causing a bit of mayhem behind the scenes. But then we've got Dane Murphy in. But then there was this controversy the other week when you look at it that Vrentsos is still on the board there doing something, but no one particularly knows what. We spoke to an ex-staff member, I'll keep him unnamed, off recording, and said about that he was a nice guy, but it was one of those Marmite situations of you either liked him or you hated him. And obviously that's not someone we can't have behind the scenes really dividing the club. And we see Dane Murphy coming in as this change and everything. But there was the rumours on Twitter a few weeks ago that weren't helpful at all, that were definitely a load of rubbish about Dane Murphy resigning or being sacked. And I think that was a lot of probably just fear from the club, wasn't it? From the fans, Adam, because we saw all this panic coming about, that the one person that we've got to finally maybe save us has seen what a mess we are and that he's decided to leave.
Yeah, that's not how jobs work, is it? Ultimately, he's been here for 2 months. He knows the mess we're in. I think people are naive to think that Dane Murphy doesn't know more than we do, because he does. He works there. He's there every day. He was at the Cardiff game on Saturday. I don't want to put. The thing is, we can't put too much pressure on the guy either. He did a brilliant job at Barnsley, but to do a great job, all the pieces have to fall into place. Marinakis has to play ball with him. Frentos needs to not get involved with the Forest side of things. Apparently did a great job for Olympiacos. Keep him there. If ultimately Dane Murphy is going to do this job, he needs to be able to make the decisions himself. I hope, and I'm speaking as a very optimistic Forest fan here rather than a realistic Forest fan, I hope that Dane Murphy can come in and be given free rein to do what he wants to do, to implement his vision. Ultimately, what I can actually see is that in 12 months' time, maybe we were. I mean, for me, and it may be fairly controversial, I don't think that Forest are in a position this season where we'd get relegated, even under Hughton. I think this will turn around to a point of maybe staying up at the very best. I mean, we do have a good squad of players. I think we do have some talented footballers here. You've got 3 members of your first team 11 being touted for Premier League moves. It doesn't happen if you've not got a talented bunch of players. But I think if Dane Murphy had his way already, and I think this is maybe where my concern comes through, that he doesn't have his way, he doesn't get the complete say of things. Chris Hughton wouldn't still have a job here if Dane Murphy was making that decision. If it was only him making that decision, I don't think that Hughton would still have a job, because I don't think Hughton fits what Murphy wants to do at the club. So I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that isn't the case. But like mentioned about the Millwall home game, if Chris Hughton's still in the dugout in that Millwall game and we've lost the games in between, I'd be baffled if Dane Murphy is okay with that.
Definitely. And it was interesting after the Cardiff game. Obviously, David Johnson, Brennan's dad, was on Sky, basically said that he doesn't think that Hughton should still be in a job. Then basically said as well, I think it was pre-match, that he didn't really have a lot of say in transfers, which was, I think maybe some fans took it a bit too much that he was, leaking all this stuff out. And then there was the tweet that went out afterwards. And for those that didn't see it, because it's been taken down now, he just put, "Just so angry, disappointed about how this club is run, and it's embarrassing. The whole board should be gone. They're a disgrace. Last time I said anything bad about the club, Vrentsos called me. I'll wait for his call, I guess, as I was right the first time." And now the tweet has been taken down. Des, what were your thoughts on the tweet? And do you think that this was either Johnson maybe calming down a bit and going, "Actually, you know what, I should take that down"? Or do you think it was the club telling him to put him down? Otherwise, something will happen with Brennan in the squad.
You don't know, do you? Because you've heard all the rumours that they don't like bad publicity. Do you know the whole thing with Dan Taylor? Do you know there was a connection there with the club for the time, for a period of time when it was all positive and there was a lot of support coming from Dan Taylor. Do you know, and whilst I think he's like the rest of us, he just wants the best for the club. Do you know, he's very vocal, and we all love to read that because we feel we get a better insight. So it's possible that they've asked him to do that, you know, and there's repercussions on Brennan. But at the end of the day, he's not far wrong, is he? Do you know, he's a passionate guy. I sat near him at Derby, and he was living every moment of it. He was in the crowd. He was a few rows back, you know, and he was living every moment of the game. He was really sort of feeling it, you know, as frustrated as the rest of us, and that's great to see that somebody in that position, you know, a player's dad, if he's feeling it, obviously Brennan's feeling it, you know. There was a lot of people trying to play down what he said, you know. You can read them sometimes and go, well, it's just so many characters, or it's just this. At the end of the day, he said it, you know. If he feels like he has to say something, then, you know, like us all, when we're compelled to say something, you know, we do it. Most of us do it because we've sat on it and sat on it and sat on it, and it's frustrated the life out of us. You know, some people, of course, on Twitter and social media sort of lash out too freely, but most of us try and be reserved with it and sort of think things through. And I guess over time he's thought it through, and there's possibly frustration in the way that I have no idea. I'm just surmising a little bit here, but there might have been frustration over Brennan Johnson, whether he was being transferred or what they were doing with him, and he was at the team and he was in the team. You know, all these kind of little things might be building up, but it in a way, you know, he's not the only one, is he? I mentioned Gary Birtles and Darren Fletcher, you know, and it was Darren Fletcher who said we need to start hearing from the club. All we're hearing from is a player's dad. You know, and that's good for us as fans because he feels like one of our own, and it feels like someone else is feeling it. But ultimately, we need to hear from what's his name? Sorry, Dane
Murphy.
Dane Murphy. So of course, we need to hear from Dane Murphy. He's the CEO of Nottingham Forest Football Club. We need to hear from him. We need to know what's going on. It's okay, Johnson saying it. It's okay, Darren Fletcher saying it. You know, they've got an angle on it. Dan Taylor's another one. But what we need is answers from the club. And until we get them, people like that are just going to keep talking. And that's all we're clinging on to, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you touched upon there with Dan Taylor as a journalist and everyone wanting to hear the best and everything from the people that are supposedly reporting back to us about what's happening. He doesn't actually cover Forest, he said in the podcast, but from what you see on his Twitter feed, you'd think so, just because he's such a big fan of the club. Over the transfer window, we saw a lot of news coming out on Twitter from journalists, and I think a lot of the new young journalists that have just qualified did a great job, to be honest. A lot of them coming out not having a name beforehand and being some of the most trusted sources afterwards. Feel for them a bit, obviously, with the way that we get linked with everyone and then it doesn't come through and then people hear, but you said it came through and it was happening. But that's just a transfer window for you. We had an interesting transfer window. We had a very, very slow start and then a very late flurry. There were some names that you hadn't heard of coming in, and there were some names you had heard of, and there were also links flying about everywhere. I've got a list down here, and probably the ones that people are most excited about is Ojeda from Paraguay. He's set to come in and have this big impact on the team, which hopefully doesn't pressurise him. But also Zinkernagel has come in on loan and been brilliant. Adam, what are your thoughts on Zinkernagel on loan so far, and how he's been getting on in the transfer window as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I've lost my video. Apologies for that. So I think he's come in, and obviously he's got so much passion. I don't know if when you go to games, you notice him do it, but he sort of gets the crowd going and stuff. He pumps his arms up in front of the. But now, to say, I think he's been brilliant since he came in, and I think his attitude's been brilliant as well. And I think that's always helpful for a player. But yeah, I mean, I've said the window itself is probably a 6 out of 10. You know, C plus. You know, we plugged some gaps. The fullbacks coming in was absolutely vital that we got them to come in, and they did. People wanting a centre forward, but I think personally, like Des has said, I think Taylor and Grabban are 2 fantastic centre forwards, just not being played to their strengths. And I think we all got excited about Josh Maja rumours. We all got excited about, you know, spending £4.5 million on a footballer, and maybe showing some force there, but unfortunately that didn't happen. It depends who you believe. A lot of people said it was never going to happen, but I think we've got what we've got now, and I think we had a positive enough window to give us something to look forward to. Ojeda, like you mentioned, people are looking forward to him because of his progressive numbers. Obviously, a couple of analytics for us put online as well about his numbers and how he likes to progress the ball from midfield, which is music to our ears. But he's a young kid. You know, he's coming from Paraguay and he's coming into the English game. It's going to be really tough for him. You know, and we can't put too much pressure on him. But yeah, hopefully it works out. And I think coming out of the window, if we'd signed Maja, people would say it was an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. But because we didn't, it's a 6, and I think that's fair. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with these group of players, because I don't think anyone could tell me that Chris Hughton signing Brian Ojeda from Paraguay. You'd like to think that that's Dave Murphy signing, and it's a statement of intent from him going forward, really.
Yeah, there was a real mix in that transfer window. Some people you maybe believed that Hughton would have had a say in, and then some that really weren't. But there were some good deals in there. I think one that's maybe been overlooked just by the fact of previous spells is Silva, that came in from West Ham. I think the deal they've come out with now is something like 200,000. Yes, he's got a big sell on, but it's a good deal, I think, for us to get in someone that we need. I think it reminds me a little bit of when we got in Amiobi and everyone was, oh God, we've got Amiobi, he's useless, he's going to be rubbish for us, and then came in and actually did quite a good job, to be fair. Des, what are your thoughts on the window? Obviously, we've got James Garner back as well.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that sort of said just before the end of the transfer window, it kind of reeled off who we'd signed, and we'd signed the goalkeeper, we'd signed Garner, Zinkernagel, one or two others, and it all, when you looked at it in the cold light of day, if you'd signed them all at the start of the season and they was in the team, it looked like even before the last day, it looked like a really good window. At the end of last season, we'd have gone, we'll take that. You know, we might have kept one or two of the ones we let go to assist that. And then some of the players that come in, you know, I don't want to sit on the fence, but I've been watching football long enough now to know that modern day transfers, we don't know about these people. Do you know, I watch a lot of football. I consider myself a purist, and we talk about it a lot. So we're heavily involved. But we don't know these players until we've seen them. And one of the best things about football is going to the match and making your own mind up about a player. You know, and even in the first couple of games, sometimes you can't do that. There's one or two, you know, I think of Dimitri.
Yeah, I know
you know from the outset that you've got a bad one. Do you know? So when it comes to the sort of latest signings, I'm just really, really looking forward to seeing them. And the reality is, can they be much worse? You know, than a lot of them are signed to fill positions which we know are weak. You know, the fullbacks especially. Of course, the Paraguayan guy. You know, even the goalkeeper to some degree. We're looking forward to watching these develop and see if they become a real asset to the club. What does frustrate me in the transfer window, and this is this is why I think Forest fans get particularly sort of irate, is if you look back over the last, I don't know how long, 15 years maybe, do you know, when apart from Antonio and Britt Belonga, that's where we'll look back to, because I've just answered my own question. Until we go back to Antonio, when was the last time we bought a player and made a profit off a player we bought? It's a no-brainer that they're pumping money into the academy, because the only saleable assets we ever have are coming out of the academy. Do you know, so I understand that side of it, but that's really frustrating when it comes to transfer windows. And this is why when we sign a bunch of players that nobody's heard of, the fans are getting really, really upset, because we signed a bunch of players last season who we'd not heard of and barely ever played. The ones we had heard of, you know, have just been given away or loaned out or on high wages in the bomb squad, you know, and that's happened for 3 or 4 seasons now. And it's a case of, you know, the one about the boy who cried wolf. Forest have been doing this for too long for us just to go, okay, we're happy with all those signings. You know, I can see why fans are frustrated. Other clubs' fans are frustrated, but we see it every single season. We've not made a profit on a player for years, since probably Britt longer. I might be wrong. There might be 1 or 2 out there. But generally, we buy 7, 8, 10, 16 as it was last season, and not one of them is really cutting the mustard. When you come to pick the first 11, you know, you still go back to Joe Worrell, Figueiredo, you know, McKenna looks a good call to sort of play devil's advocate with that. But it's just players like Lyle Taylor, comes with a big reputation. We're not, if we did sell him now, we're not going to make a profit. And we've seen too many of these players just come in, and it's not their fault, you know. I said this sort of outwardly on Twitter. It's not their fault if we sign them, but they come in, they go through the club for 2-3 months, and then they're out the door. We've seen it with Soudani and Sarafad and people like this who looked okay, you know, looked like they could do a job. But what's happening all the time is they just sort of moved on very quickly. Bukalakis is another one, you know, and then they go on and be a bit of a better player than they were for us. And when we have got a good one under Marinakis, it's almost like he wants to pick them off for Olympiacos. You know, I think of Silva, who played in midfield. You know, he didn't pull up any trees, but he's better than what we've got now. You know, he's better than this position in the league table. And then Ribeiro, it was almost like he unsettled him, you know, because they wanted him to go to Olympiacos. And that's the frustration, that ultimately players are coming in and leaving on a free 6 months, a year, 2 years later, sometimes just lingering around forever, like Jenkinson, you know. And when it comes to it, it's Brennan Johnson, it's Joe Worrell, it's all the players that come through the academy that are actually the core of the club, that are the best players still, even with the players that we've signed. What we need to be doing, and this is where my real frustration is, sorry to go a long-winded way about my point, but what we need to do is sign 3 players of real quality. You know, I'm not going to be, it has to be championship, they have to be streetwise, they have to know what they're doing. But somehow we've got to find those 3 players. If it was Maja, I don't know, Garner and whoever, Zinkernagel, you know, you would have gone, wow, at the start of the season. That really changes our team. That makes us look like a real, that all of a sudden, I spoke about it when we was looking at managers, from being defensive, all of a sudden you go, we've signed 3 real good forward-thinking players, and it changes club mentality. But the reality is we sign all these players again who, not all of them can even play. We've signed too many again, because we've kept Brennan Johnson, we've kept Worrell, we've kept Taylor, Grab, and all those kind of, they're always going to play, no matter who we sign. So again, we're going to have surplus players who are never going to play for the club. And that's a frustration. I feel what we need to do is buy quality, not quantity. And this is why everybody's getting so frustrated.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns of looking at this window, it's a good window, and we're seeing the Paraguayan lad come in. And I think from looking at it out from the start, if you're going, if he's any good, he's going to Olympiacos. And I think obviously that's awful. That's the mindset that we've ended up with, obviously, with the owners. And you said there, Thiago Silva going, which was annoying to every Forest fan, because you said he wasn't like the best player in the team, but he was good. And you look back at games like when we played Fulham and there was that amazing team goal, his positioning and everything just added to that so much, and he was brilliant. But I can see if a Jada does well, and let's say we don't go up in the next couple of years, I think he's definitely off to Olympiacos, whether he'll want to or not. Maybe it'll be like Ribeiro. And I think Ribeiro was another prime example of that. Was the whole reason he left the club, was probably to do with that. And I think I saw on social media someone had messaged him and gone, was it your choice or the club's choice to see you go? And he replied and said it was the club's. He didn't like go on from any of that, but still to see that, it's not very, very helpful at all. We did see, I'll end it on this one, we saw the return this season for João Carvalho. He's the club's record signing, splits the fan base a lot, but everyone seems to want to see him in the team. Even if he doesn't deliver, the fact that he's on there will add a little bit of a spark. Adam, what are your thoughts on Carvalho as a whole? And then as we'll end it off, your thoughts for the rest of the season.
It's not Carvalho's fault that we spent £13 million on him. Ultimately, he's an incredibly talented footballer, isn't he? I think that's something that we all know. I think as a fan base, even people that don't like him, even people that criticise him, if you are a football fan, you can see that he's an incredibly talented footballer. And to see him back in the squad's brilliant. It's weird because it almost feels like he's coming at the worst possible time, because now Brennan Johnson's emerging. Do you know what I mean? And I think that makes it harder for him to really get a run of games, because Brennan Johnson's playing. And if Brennan Johnson's going to get played as a 10, I don't think anyone would pick Carvalho over Johnson, which is tough. Personally, I think Johnson might be better out wide, and I think he says much himself. So, but for the rest of the season, the goal is to stay up, isn't it? And that's so hard to say. I know after 6-7 games we can't really say if that's the goal, but we'll probably finish 15th, 16th under a new manager, and we go again next season. It's disappointing, but unfortunately, I feel like that's where we're at. But yeah, it's one of those seasons again, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Des, what are your thoughts on the Portuguese prince?
Like Adam says, he's a talented footballer, but he's not for me in this. There's too many managers now, too many football people, and whatever we know and whatever we think of Chris Hughton and Samuel Imucci and however much we want him, they know footballers as well. They know how it works, and none of them are picking him. It's as simple as that. He's not. It's not as if one manager's come in and bombed him out. He's had chances under most managers, and I look back and I can count on one hand how many good games he's had. In fact, the only one that really springs to mind is a few games at the start of Cranker's reign, but the one that really stands out is the Middlesbrough game, where he tore them apart that day under Martin O'Neill, which is interesting in itself, because Martin O'Neill gets the blame for his demise almost. But I don't know. He's an enigma, isn't he? I'd love it to work for him. Again, he seems like he kind of applies himself off the pitch properly. It just seems like when he's on the pitch, that same kind of application is not there, and that willingness to sort of make himself sort of undroppable. And if he played like he did against Middlesbrough, he put in a performance against QPR that day when he scored a great goal down the touchline. That kind of thing, it makes it impossible to leave him out. But we see that once in a season, once in a blue moon. So I just think, again, it's one of those, it's lingered on that much. The club need to sort it out. It's one of those issues what leave everybody asking questions. When we spoke about main stand and Dane Murphy and Chris Hughton and João Carvalho is another one, let's get these issues sorted and resolved and move forward as a club, until we sort of almost let him go. I think that issue is always going to be there. And again, with the club sort of needing to raise funds, why is he not one? Why is there no one banging the door down if he's that much of a great footballer?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on some of those points there. Well, thank you everybody for listening. That's all we've got for today. Thanks, Des and Adam, for coming on and giving your thoughts. I'll leave your socials down below of the YouTube video and in the links to the Spotify and Apple. Make sure you go and follow them and check them out. Thank you everybody for listening. That was The Final Whistle.